بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Welcome to Quran Study for Non-Muslims, where we attempt to understand the teachings of the Holy Book of Islam using an easy-to-follow approach that caters to non-Muslims or people with little or no previous knowledge of the Quran. So if you've been curious about Islam and the book that forms the basis of belief for over 1 billion people around the world, but never had the time to dig into it, you've come to the right place. Greetings of peace, everyone. This is episode 1, and we will start out at the beginning of the Quran with the first chapter, or surah as it is known in Arabic. The first chapter is called al-Fatiha, and it is actually quite a small chapter. It contains only 7 verses, or 7 ayah as we talked about it in Arabic. But don't let the small size of the chapter fool you. Surah al-Fatiha holds a very significant place in the Quran and in the religion of Islam. For starters, it is recited multiple times within the 5 daily prayers that Muslims perform. It is also considered as the key to the subject matter of the whole Quran. All that to say that we will be spending multiple episodes discussing this chapter and trying to really understand the subject matter. Now, before going into the verses and the subject matter of this chapter, just an interesting point regarding the background. The best-known name of the chapter is, as I mentioned, al-Fatiha. It is interesting to note that this very name occurs in the New Testament prophecy. In Revelation 10:1, it is written, "I saw another mighty angel come down from heaven, and he had in his hand a little book open, and he set his right foot upon the sea and his left foot on the earth." The Hebrew word for open that is used is fatoha, which is the same as the Arabic word Fatiha. Revelation 10:3 states, "And when he," that is the angel, "had cried, 7 thunders uttered their voices." It is believed that the 7 thunders represent the 7 verses of this chapter. Now, I'm sure people have different interpretations and opinions on this, but just wanted to mention it in case anyone wants to do more research. Now, let's get into the content of Surah al-Fatiha. The first verse of this chapter reads, "In the name of Allah, the Gracious, the Merciful." Now, you may recall that we had mentioned this verse in the previous episode as well. This first verse is unique because it actually serves as the first verse of every chapter. Well, not quite every chapter. There is one chapter that doesn't start with this verse, and there's a good reason for that, something that we will discuss when we get to it. Now, there is a hadith. Remember, hadith is, as we discussed in the intro, is a saying of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. There is a hadith that whenever any new chapter was revealed, this was the first verse to be revealed. And in this way, it served as the marker for the start of the revelation of a new chapter. The second point to note about this verse is that it is commonly recited by Muslims before starting any good deed. This is based on a saying of the Prophet. He's reported to have said that any important work which is done without reciting in the name of Allah is apt to prove devoid of God's blessings. Now, to the key words used in this verse that we need to discuss. Again, the verse that we are talking about is "In the name of Allah, the Gracious, the Merciful." And the key words are Allah, Gracious, and Merciful. Allah in Arabic is the name of the Supreme Being. And in the Arabic language, the word is never used for any other thing or being. Also, you'll never find it being used in the plural. And this actually points to the central tenet of Islam, which revolves around the unity of God. So, for example, whereas the word God, which is normally used in English to refer to Supreme Being, can be used for other concepts such as He is the God of tennis, to refer to the best tennis player, or can be used in the plural form, such as when we say Greek gods. You won't find this kind of use in the Arabic language when it comes to the word Allah. Going back to the first verse of Surah al-Fatiha, the second key word to focus on is gracious. The Arabic word for this is Rahman, and likewise the third word to focus on is merciful, and the Arabic for that is Rahim. We have discussed the word Allah, and we'll also discuss the other two key words, but in a future episode, because these words appear again in this chapter, and their discussion would be more appropriate there. Just as a precursor, even though the English translations are gracious and merciful, the Arabic words that correspond to these, as we mentioned, are Rahman and Rahim, and there's a lot of depth to cover on these two words as they represent the primary attributes of Allah. I know this is a short episode, but I just wanted to start out slow. Surely we'll get into more detailed content in the future episodes. In summary, the verse "In the name of Allah, the gracious, the merciful" appears as the first verse of all chapters of the Quran, with the exception of one. It is a phrase that is recited by Muslims at the start of all good tasks and endeavors. And the word Allah is the Arabic word for God, but it is unique in how it is used in the Arabic language in that it points to the unity of God, which is the central concept of the religion of Islam. Well, that is the end of today's episode. The sources of our content are the short and 5-volume commentaries published by Islam International Publications, references to both of which you can find in the show notes. Thank you and stay safe. Hope you enjoyed today's session and learned something new in the process. Remember, this content is available both in audio format as a podcast and in video format as a YouTube channel. In either case, just search for Quran Study for Non-Muslims. Also, for more information or to get in touch with us, visit our website at qs4nm.com, which is short for Quran Study for Non-Muslims.